Welcome, everybody. So we can read from the Chaitanya Chaitamrita.
I'll give permission for you to share the screen, Maharaj. I'll make you the co-host. So
I can share the screen.
yeah, you are now co-host, Maharaj.
Okay, just a minute then. So let's read from Chaitanya Chaitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 19, and just a minute. So it's number 1. Let's have a look, share the screen. So have you got that? Can you see it?
Yes, Maharaj, we can see that.
Okay, that's all right then. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Oh, Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Vrindavaniyam Rasakeli Vartam. Kalena Luptam Nija Shakti Muktaha. Sancharya Rupe Vyatanot Punaksa. Prabhur Vidoprag Ivaloka Shristim. Vrindavaniyam, related to Vrindavan, Rasakeli Vartam. I can't read this actually. Oh, that's it, you can shift it. No, where are we? Rasakeli Vartam talks about the pastimes of Sri Krishna. Kalena, with the course of time. Luptam, lost. Nija Shaktim, his personal potency. Utkaha, being eager. Sancharya, infusing. Rupe, to Rupa Goswami. Vyatanot, manifested. Punak, Punaha, again, Saha, he, Prabhu, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Vidho, unto Lord Brahma, Prak, Eva, as formerly Loka Shrishtim, the creation of this cosmic manifestation. Translation. Both the creation of this cosmic manifestation, the Lord, before the creation of this cosmic manifestation, the Lord enlightened the heart of Lord Brahma with the details of the creation and manifested the Vedic knowledge. In exactly the same way, the Lord, being anxious to revive the Vrindavan pastimes of Lord Krishna, impregnated the heart of Rupa Goswami with spiritual potency. By this potency, Srila Rupa Goswami could revive the activities of Krishna in Vrindavan. Activities almost lost to memory. In this way, he spread Krishna consciousness throughout the world. So there's no purport, but that's the case with most of us, the Chaitamrita verses. So we can still speak on it because we'll be quoting from purports from about okay. Omiganti Mirandasya Ganandina Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Jena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha Sri Chaitanyam Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Nidati Svavadantam Andeham Sri Guru Sri Yuta Padakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavam Sha Sri Rupam Sarvajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Prijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakam Vitam Sha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabando Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavanishwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Kriya Anchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhayevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadha Sri Vasdi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So this is the auspicious day of Srila Rupa Goswami's leaving this world. So we might think, why is that auspicious? Because whether a devotee is present or not, it's auspicious to remember that devotee. Whether Krishna is present before us, it's auspicious to remember Krishna, whether he's, whether he's actually personally there or whether it's in remembrance. It says, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, he reasons ill with things that Vaishnavas die. For Vaishnava dies to live, and in living, and spread the holy name around. So while devotees are here, they benefit society greatly. And then that knowledge actually goes on into the next generation. It's not lost. At some point, it becomes lost to some degree, and then Krishna has to it says in Yada Yada Hidharma Shah, he has to, rejuvenate religious principles. Parishnaya Saranam Vinashaya Tuduskritam. But, it's still through the devotees. The devotees are the vehicle or medium by which Krishna gives his mercy. This is explained in the Murari Kadambani, that Krishna's Rasavai Saha, He's the reservoir of everything, all pleasures, all reciprocations. And he's completely independent. And his internal potency, or Srimati Radharani, or Bhakti Devi, she's also completely independent. So in one respect, it's not dependent on the devotee alone. Everything is dependent on Krishna ultimately. But for, according to Shastra at least, Krishna gives the prerogative to his devotee to spread Krishna consciousness. And according to the devotee's surrender, he's able to actually infuse Krishna consciousness in others. So now we're talking about one of the prominent devotees in our sampradaya. First there was Lord Krishna, Lord Brahma, Madhavacharya, and then the next was Madhavendra Puri, who gave us the mood of service in separation from Lord Krishna, and Lord Chaitanya, Sarup Damodar, 6 Goswamis, Krishna Das Narottam Das Thakur, Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami, like that. Then eventually Vrindavan Das Thakur and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, like Baladev Vidibhushan, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Gauri Kishore Das Babaji, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and our own Srila Prabhupada, and our initiating spiritual masters who were serving Srila Prabhupada in that way. But Rupa Goswami has a particular place in that his situation is that he's called Rasacharya. I mean, Sanatana Goswami is actually older than Rupa Goswami, and he's actually, called the emblem of Srimad Bhagavatam. He was absorbed always in Srimad Bhagavatam. So why do we actually call ourselves the followers of Rupa Goswami, or Rupa? Rupa Anuga. Anuga means to follow. So we're titled as Rupa Anugas. Why not Sanatana Anugas? So that's a whole story. And Rupa Goswami, when he first saw Lord Chaitanya at Rath Yatra, Lord Chaitanya was dancing in ecstasy, and he was quoting one verse. It was a mundane verse, actually. Let's see if I've got it. Just a minute. I've got it somewhere, just a minute. Just a minute, I don't know. I don't think it matters so much. I should have kept it, but anyway, basically the essence of the verse is that, the Lord's swooning over this mundane verse about, a lover being separated from his beloved, and he yearns to go back to the banks of the Reva under the Vetasi tree and see his consort again. And so, you can imagine at Rath Yatra, if a sannyasi or an Rinamsi started, chanting this, that it would raise a few eyebrows, to say the least, And so, the devotees couldn't understand this, what Rupa Goswami was, what Lord Chaitanya was chanting. And, but then later, Rupa Goswami understood the heart of Lord Chaitanya. And he wrote a verse from Shastra, and it's about the same mood of the relationship between Krishna and Srimati Radharani, exactly the same type of thing. And so he could see the spiritual connotation of what Lord Chaitanya was actually saying. And so one day Lord Chaitanya, he went to visit Rupa Goswami when he came to to Puri. And Rupa Goswami at the time was taking his midday bath. And he left a parchment in the roof of his Bhajan Kutir. And so Lord Chaitanya picked this parchment out of the rafters and he started reading it. And then he turned to Swarup Damodar and said, how did Rupa Goswami know my mind? It was a verse that, he actually found in Shastra about this chanting of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And so Swarup Damodar says, because you've given him your mercy, my Lord, therefore he can understand, and nobody else could understand. So therefore, he could understand the rasa of Lord Chaitanya and Krishna very intimately. And so he was given the name Ras Acharya. In this way, he's able to actually pass on the mood of Lord Chaitanya to, his descendants. And we are one of those descendants. And what is that mood? It gives us, it explains about devotional service in separation. We're all separated from Krishna. But this devotional service in separation is actually the highest mood that we can possibly achieve. It may not be manifested yet. It is to some degree. Why? Because it says that when there's contact, there's always something missing out of familiarity. Familiarity breeds contempt. I'm not sure that's true in the spiritual world, but it's like, you become a little bit complacent when you've got the object of your love or your desires with you. You think, now, you know what I mean? And we take it a little bit for granted, maybe. And this is the whole purpose which started off the Ras dance, actually. The gopis were thinking like that. So that, and all pastime with Krishna and the gopis started to manifest in service and separation. And it said this separation, actually, we become very focused on the object of our love. When we separate from that object, it becomes more intense. And so Rupa Goswami was highlighting that in this verse. Of course, Rupa Goswami, he was inspired to write 2 poems, 2 plays, Vidagda Madhava and Lalita Madhava. And the first one is about the pastimes between Srimati Radharani, the gopis, and Krishna in Vrindavan, Leela Madhava. And also Kavi Karnapur wrote this, wrote about this play also. But he didn't want to write the second play, which is Vidagda Madhava. This is actually the pastimes where Krishna leaves the gopis in Vrindavan and goes to Dwarka. And so, Kavi Karnapur couldn't stand to write this play. He was actually heartbroken that Krishna was going. And so he didn't want to actually write it. And so he didn't. But then along came Rupa Goswami, and Lord Chaitanya intimated to Rupa Goswami that he should write both poems. So why is that? We've just mentioned that actually when there's a distance in between the love and the beloved, then actually it's an increased ras. So it's not like Kavi Karnapur was saying, although Kavi Karnapur was fully aware of this thing, but he was playing the part of being heartbroken that Krishna left the gopis. But, in this second play, it's actually expressing the higher ras of separation from Krishna. And so there are 2 plays like that. I say I've jumped the gun, I've gone straight into the heart of what I was going to say. I was going to lead up to this, but anyway, what to do? So this is Rupa Goswami, Rasacharya. So we're Rupa Nugas. And by following in the line of Rupa Goswami, who left us all the literatures necessary to actually progress in devotional service. What are those literatures? There's the Nectar of Instruction. This is a title, this is like seen as a very elementary book. Right, it's got everything in it. Right from the beginning of devotional service, controlling the senses, right to the end where we're actually residing on the banks of Radhakund in a spiritual body surcharged with ecstatic symptoms. Aprakrita Bharava. And so Rupa Goswami, he gave this so that we could become Goswamis. First, learning to control the senses and focus them on Krishna, learning how to associate with devotees, then, learning how to differentiate between devotees and who to take shelter of, how to, understand who's on the highest platform. By chanting the holy name, we can actually achieve the goal. We can become, just by chanting the holy name and hearing about Krishna, we can become fixed on the platform of spontaneous devotional service. And then when that happens, we can get spiritual emotions, Rati Bhava, or Raga, sorry. And then that becomes condensed into prema, pure love. And in the spiritual world, this prema has many divisions, which are increasing. Sneha, mana, all the way up to Mahabhava, which is experienced by Srimati Radharani. So, we're actually like the tip of, we're performing devotional service, and it's a tip of the iceberg. It's not that, we can go back to the spiritual world and it's all over. It's only just beginning. But this tip of the iceberg seems like, a millennium. Because we have so many anarthas in the heart. So we're going through the process of anartha nivritti. And it seems a long time, but really it's not such a long time. If we're a little serious, then in one lifetime we can overcome this attachment to the material energy, and we can start to, make rapid progress in devotional service. So Rupa Goswami facilitated that. And then he gave us a nectar of the nectar of devotion, which is called the law book. We can understand the law book for Vaishnavas. We can understand what is devotional service, what is not devotional service, who is practicing pure devotional service, who is not, what the mood is. About these, Raganuga Bhakti, how we become attached to a devotee, and he leads on the path to Vrindavan. About Bhava Bhakti, symptoms, about Prema Bhakti. It's all there in the first 19 chapters of it. So Rupa Goswami did this. He compiled these books. The gopis of the 6 Goswamis were given 4 basic things, 4 basic duties by Lord Chaitanya: to write books, to study the script, Nana Shastra Vicharanaika Nipano, Saddharma Sanstarpako. So that, Nana Shastra, there are many scriptures. So they had to, read these scriptures. Some of them were in Arabic, some in Persian. We've got one Persian, just come on. So they got the essence. Vaishnava e Kalikale Nara Dharm. E Vaishnava Shastra Vaishnava Dharm. So in this age, there's only one set of scriptures that we should read, and that's the Vaishnava Shastras, because they were, particularly, what can you say? What's the word? They were sorted from the rest of the scriptures, the essence. And so we don't have to, all the hard work's been done. So Rupa Goswami did all this. So Sanatana Goswami, of course, he wrote Hari Bhakti Vilas and some other books. The Brihat, Bhagavatamrita, which are also helpful. But basically, the main books for practicing devotional service were there by Rupa Goswami. So, you know, Rupa Goswami, his history is that originally from South India, his lineage. And it started with Jagat Guru. My tool thing. Jagat Guru. He was in South India, and he was so learned and powerful that they gave him the position of a king. He was the king of one of the provinces in South India. Karnataka it was actually. And from Jagat Guru, his son was called Aniruddha. So Aniruddha, he was actually endowed with the power of Indra and the opulence, not the opulence, but the what is it, the power of what is it, the moon, what's it, Chandra. He had these two great opulences. So, you know, his lineage is very powerful. They were the great devotees. Then from Aniruddha came Rupeshwar and Harihar. He had two sons. Rupeshwar was a very Paka Brahman, very learned devotee. But Harihar, he was a Kshatriya spirit. He became a very powerful fighter, very powerful warrior. And that was to the disadvantage of Rupeshwar, because when Aniruddha eventually left this world, their father, Harihar, he used his power to take everything. So Rupeshwar wasn't left with anything. So this is the nature of a Kshatriya sometimes. They're very, very, what's the word? Very cruel sometimes, Kshatriyas. A real Kshatriya is cruel to be kind, not cruel for the sake of it. And then from Rupeshwar, a son was born called Radha Manav. And then eventually his son was called Mukunda. And his son was called Kumardev. Kumardev, he went to what is now called Bangladesh, which then was called East Bengal. And he situated himself in a place called Bakla Chandravaj Rupa. No, sorry, Bakla Chandradvip. And there he had three sons. This is where Rupa Goswami was born. Amara, Santosh, and Anupam. So Amara is actually the initial name of Rupa Goswami before they were initiated. And Santosh is the original name or birth name of Sanatana Goswami. And the third brother, Anupam, this was, I forget what Anupam's initiated name was now. I can't remember. But anyway, Anupam left his body very early, and then there was just Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami. So, you know, these two brothers, they started serving in the court of the Hussain Shah, the king of that part of India, Muslim king. And they became so expert in their duties that the king gave them very high posts. He gave them post up to Sanatana Goswami of Prime Minister. Can you imagine? You know, a so-called Hindu as Prime Minister. I mean, usually it's like, that's the last thing anybody wants to do who's, you know, invaded a territory and overtaken it. They want to put the old men in the top post. Like the British, when they went to India, they'd occupy the top post, or the top couple of posts, but then they'd let the Indians take on posts which were not so powerful. So, I suppose it was so they could keep control. But, Sanatan and Rupa, they were so expert that the king realized that I just got to put them in that place. And so, and then Rupa Goswami became the treasurer, the chief treasurer. So after some time, Rupa Goswami, he escaped that particular situation with Anupam. And he was keeping a track on where Lord Chaitanya was. He'd heard of Lord Chaitanya. And I think he met him in his earlier part of his life. No, that was actually one of the other Goswamis. But he wanted to actually become an associate of Lord Chaitanya. So he sent someone to Jagannath Puri to give him information of where Lord Chaitanya was actually going and where he was due to go and so many things. And so eventually he got news that Lord Chaitanya was going to Vrindavan. So Lord Chaitanya tried to go to Vrindavan 3 times, but the devotees kept, playing tricks on him, so he couldn't go. And eventually, this was the 3rd time, he eventually managed to go. And this is when Rupa Goswami, he went to see Lord Chaitanya, who was actually staying in, what's that word? Where the Triveni is, Prayag. It's called Allahabad now, the Prayag. That's where the confluence of the Yamuna, the Ganges, and the Saraswati meet. 3 rivers, so they call it Triveni. And that's where they have the Kumbh Mela, have the Mahad Kumbh Mela every 12 years. They have minor, smaller Kumbh Melas in between. But anyway, at this place, at the Dashashvamedha Ghat, that means the Dashashva means 10. This is where Lord Chaitanya gave Rupa Goswami his instructions for the prosecution of devotional service. Lord Chaitanya only, wrote 8 instructions called the Shikshastakam. And everything's in there. But he wanted to actually make this knowledge available for the general people. And so he needed actually commenting and expanding. And so he gave the Goswamis this duty. One of the duties was to write books. And this was, as you said earlier, they actually disseminated all the scriptures and came up with the Vaishnava Shastras. The other thing, they want them to find the lost places of pilgrimage in Vrindavan and reconstruct temples there. And what was the last one? To inaugurate the process of Bhakti Yoga. And so this was the 4 things that Lord Chaitanya asked them to do, and Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami were the ones who started. Sanatana Goswami, as we know, we've probably heard that he actually escaped the jail later. He was put in jail by the Nawab Hussain Shah because he was actually, he wasn't going to do his duty. He got a sick note. Put a sick note in, but the Nawab Hussain Shah, he sent his own physician to find out what's the matter, We need his expert dealings. And so the physician came out and said, there's nothing wrong with him. He's reading the Bhagavatam with a load of Brahmins. And so then the Nawab Hussain Shah went and started to try to persuade him to come back to his service, but he'd actually retired. And so the Nawab Hussain Shah put him in prison. And then he went to conquer Orissa, or try anyway. He didn't know that Maharaj Prataparudra was there, so anyway, we were going to have a tough time in Orissa. But so Sanatan, he bribed the jailkeeper. A devotee is a poet, so he started to glorify this jail. He was a Muslim, about how actually they were related at some point in the past. You're my nephew, and so I really feel affection for you. Anyway, but then it took a bit more than that, and so he used the money that Rupa Goswami had left with one grocer, person who sells vegetables, and merchant, that's the word. And so he used that money to bribe the jailkeeper. And he said, if they ask you how I got away, say that, while I went to pass school, I jumped in the Ganges. And because I had the chain around my foot, I went down. Just tell him that. Anyway, so Sanatana Goswami, that's the whole story. He eventually met Lord Chaitanya in Kashi. That's where the impersonation saw. And he instructed him for not just 10 days, but for 2 months. And then eventually he told him to join Rupa Goswami in Vrindavan. And that's where they started. This is where Nana Shastra, this is where they they used to actually live under a separate tree every night, and they were writing books with tree parchment, and that's where all their work was done. So, very austere life, very special people. We can't do that. Can you imagine living under a tree, different tree every night, sleeping with, your arms as pillars. So, and then, writing books as well. It's unbelievable. So yes, that's the background of how Rupa Goswami came there. And then eventually the other Goswamis came, and one by one he instructed them in how to their particular service. And so the Goswamis were the really descendants of the 6 Goswamis. Okay. So, we've said quite a bit about Rupa Goswami. This is, in essence, there are other stories about Rupa Goswami. He was on such a high platform that even mental thoughts disturbed the bhajan. He said, in the age of Kali, we can think something wrong, but we don't get a reaction for it. But in previous ages, just by thinking something wrong, we would get a reaction. Actually, you do get a reaction. If you keep thinking something wrong, you'll do it. That's a reaction. But, Rupa Goswami, he was meditating, and he was actually thinking about the fact he was deeply absorbed in the pastimes of Radha and Krishna in Vrindavan. And then one particular pastime, it was a little humorous. So in his meditation, in his samadhi, he started chuckling. And at that time, there was one devotee who was lame. He was infirm, was walking by, and he looked, and he thought Rupa Goswami was laughing at him because he was actually lame. And so, at that time, because that devotee felt some pain, Rupa Goswami felt pain, and it broke his meditation. And so he knew just by that he'd done something wrong. His consciousness was so elevated. And so he thought, I've got to understand that I must have offended a devotee. And so he decided to, create a feast for all the residents of Vrindavan, and everybody was invited. And he knew that the one that he offended probably wouldn't come. So he did his homework, and he actually found out who came, and he found that one devotee didn't come. So he immediately went to that devotee and actually apologized and cleared his offense. So just see so we get different gradations of purity even in this world. Some people are so gross, it's not a problem to commit murder. But some people are so cultured and so purified that, we feel pain for others. This is a devotee. We can just imagine how gross people become. A few years ago, I was visiting home, and there was a program, a documentary about a prison in America. And there was one English interviewer. He was going around the prisoners who were all on death row. and he was asking them what they'd done. And some of them, you know, they were completely heartless. Even though they killed somebody, they weren't bothered. You could see that it just didn't affect them. It was just you know, some of them were paid to kill somebody. So we just see how degraded, how versatile the consciousness can become. And so a devotee is very careful to, you know, protect his consciousness by, you know, first of all, finding devotees and being engaged in the proper activities, a service that's suitable. Because if we're engaged in the wrong service, sometimes it's difficult to cope and it might spoil our devotional mood as well. So we have to be properly situated. Very important. So Rupa Goswami, you know, he didn't have that problem. He could do anything for Krishna. And he did. He did what Lord Chaitanya wanted him to do. So we'll move on. It's the second part of the class. We'll just talk a little bit about Murari Gupta. Murari Gupta, he was a lifelong associate of Lord Chaitanya. He was born in West Bengal also. He was a disciple of Chandrasekhar Acharya. And you know, he was known for having debates with Lord Chaitanya. And you know, anybody who debated with Lord Chaitanya, they lost. Nobody could defeat him. And so what happened is that, you know, I don't think it's false ego, but Murari Gupta, you know, he was a little bit miffed. He was a little bit angry that he was being defeated all the time by Lord Chaitanya. So he started arguing with him. And it came to pushing and shoving, and they were actually shoving each other about and really arguing very, vocally. And this carried on all the way to the Ganges. And he said it carried on even when they were bathing in the Ganges. He said they were so rough that the Brahmins had to get out of the Ganges because all the water became muddy. And the women had to get out. They couldn't wash their clothes. You know, nobody could do anything. So we see, you know, the same things are there in the spiritual world. You know, that it's not with all, what they call it, goody gumdrops. It's not the right word. It's not that everybody's, you know, there's activity, but it's for a different reason. And it's free from all animosity. But it's still, you know, there's so much variety there, more variety than in the material world. And so, then Lord Chaitanya eventually, actually before that, what it was is that Murari Gupta he's actually an incarnation of Hanuman. And so he was very attached to the worship of Lord Ramachandra. And, Lord Chaitanya knew this, and so he wanted to test him. So one day he said to him, Lord Sri Krishna is sweetness personified. Everybody should surrender to Lord Krishna. So, you could see Murari Gupta's hesitance, so he was preaching to him and, asking him to just worship Krishna and take shelter of him. Nothing but his service can satisfy the mind. So Lord Chaitanya was preaching like that. But Murari Gupta, he was actually convinced of the argument, but, every time he tried to actually give up the service of Lord Ramachandra and worship Krishna, he couldn't. And so, it was like in a dichotomy. He didn't want to give up the service of Lord Ramachandra, what was his actual Istadeva, but he didn't want to actually, disobey the order of Lord Chaitanya either. And so that night he just wept all night. He couldn't understand what to do. And he was so disturbed and heartbroken that he went to Lord Chaitanya the next day. And he told him, he says, you were telling me to worship Lord Krishna, and I really want to follow your orders, but I just can't give up the service of Lord Ramachandra. And at that, Lord Chaitanya was actually very satisfied with him. He says, this is a real servant. He doesn't give up the service of his Lord under any condition. Remember back to Chiru Maharaj. He was about, I can't remember exactly what the class was about, but it was about spiritual masters, about what platform spiritual masters should be on. And it got on to the topic about Prabhupada, what platform Prabhupada on. And Bhakti Churama says, I don't care what platform it was on. I don't care what platform it was on. It's my Prabhupada, and that's all I care about. So that's the thing, isn't it? We're not like looking for to differentiate to get the best. We're looking for a relationship with somebody who cares about us and who can deliver us from the material world. That's a key. And because that relationship carries on after this lifetime. It's not that we go back to the spiritual world, then, all relationships with our authorities are necessarily finished, but we'll still have some service authorities there, even in Vrindavan. The gopis, like I say, they have Vishaka and Alita, like I say, the chief gopis, and they're giving instructions to other gopis who are giving instructions to other gopis. So the same here, when we're in this, we're actually not so concerned about, we're concerned about, first, is a spiritual master following in the line of disciplic succession from Rupa Goswami? And if he is, then, who inspires us in devotional service? What mood inspires us? And then, we can actually develop a relationship based on that mood. And that relationship becomes unbreakable. And that's all we're interested in, is serving a devotee of the Lord, who we have a relationship with. And this is what was pleasing Lord Chaitanya here. He'd found that in Lord Ramachandra, and he didn't want to break it. So it was very, very strong, very sincere. This is exactly the type of love and affection that the servitor must have for the lotus feet of the Lord. Even if the Lord wants separation, the devotee cannot abandon the shelter of his lotus feet. Just to test your faint faith in your Lord, I repeatedly ask you to change your worship of Lord Ram to Lord Krishna. So congratulating Murari Gupta, the Lord continued, you are the incarnation of Hanuman, the eternal servant of Lord Ram. Therefore, why should you give up your worship of Lord Ram? If we can come to that platform, we're very, very fortunate. Okay, so the Lord Chaitanya eventually went to Gaya, he took initiation. And when he came back, as after initiation, he started exhibiting ecstatic feelings. And Lord Chaitanya told him at that point why he'd actually appeared. He'd appeared to actually propagate the Sankirtan movement. And he said, the devotees who are engaged in my service, he said that if anybody offends him, I'll tear off his head. That's what Lord Chaitanya said. So we have to be careful that we don't offend devotees. Okay, so yes, once Lord Chaitanya, he was chewing betel nut. Actually, the story of Murari Gupta, he was worshipping Vanitai. And one of his disciples, they call him, I forget what they called him before this incident, they called him Hridaya Chaitanya. And Hridaya Chaitanya had been asked to perform a festival on the banks of the Ganges by the Lord. And not far away, there was, Murari Gupta and his two Gaunitai deities. And so, right in the middle of Murari Gupta was worshipping Gaunitai. And when he put the lamp down, to bend down and put water on the water, on the water conch. When he looked up, there was no deities. And so he couldn't believe, what's happened? And he was looking all over. Then he noticed down on the banks of the Ganga where Hridaya Chaitanya was holding this sanktam. The two deities had actually they'd gone to join in the kirtan at the banks of the Ganges. And so, Murari Gupta went running after them. And so when he got there, he said, what are you doing? He was shouting at the deities, what are you doing here? Get back on the altar. And so Gaunitai, Murari Gupta was carrying a stick at that point and he was chasing them. And so they started to run. And, they were running and running. And then actually, Hridaya Chaitanya, they jumped into Hridaya Chaitanya's heart, for protection. And Murari Gupta said, come out of his heart. Well, actually, that's when he got the name Hrida. Hrida means heart, Hridaya Chaitanya. Chaita also means heart, or the life force coming from the heart. So, we can't actually imitate on that level. But, it says in Srimad Bhagavatam, we've just done a section about, in the 25th chapter, about, bhakti and meditating on the form of the Lord. I think it's the 27th chapter or 28. And it says that, with the deity's eyes, and it says that the deity will even sometimes speak to you, or they'll speak to you in dreams. So, devotional service is not an inanimate thing. It's something which is actually very vibrant and always growing. And eventually one day we can speak to Krishna. Prabhupada said that to his devotees. So one day you can see Krishna face to face. We just have to qualify ourselves. And so this is why, just like Murari Gupta. So that place is there at some point. How quickly we want to achieve that is up to the individual. But we should never be put off by any disturbance of this material world. They're all temporary. Whatever happens to us, we should keep our enthusiasm to serve in devotional service, no matter what we've done. Even in the 11th canto, chapter 20, 27 and 28, chapter 20, verse 27 and 28, Krishna explains this point that, even though a devotee, he cannot give up sense gratification. And, he shouldn't actually he should remain happy in devotional service. Because actually he'll suffer. And that suffering he goes through as a result of trying to enjoy, will eventually correct him. So even though, we can't actually follow everything sometimes, we should remain on the path. And we should be happy that we're entering into the right path. That's the point. We're on the right road. It may be rough sometimes, but so what? Every road's rough. The material road is a lot rougher. We just went into town to do the Harinam today. People are suffering so much. And, the only respite is a Harinam. We were chanting away there. And it sort of turned people's heads and they were listening. And you could see they were thinking, this is something different. This is not actually, there's some connection which we don't understand going off here. And they were coming over and looking at the book table. And one woman, she came and she took a few sets of Japabis. She'd probably never seen a set of Japabis in her life, but she was just attracted to them, so she bought them. And then her daughter bought a couple of sets. One Chinese lady came along, and we were just about to walk away. I said, "No, you can stay." She came and sat with us and started chanting for like half an hour. We can give so much mercy by this process. Anyway, we've got the best service. There's no better service. Lord Chaitanya appears once in Day of Brahma, and he propounds the Sankirtan movement. And we are actually in the first set of devotees, the second set, is Prabhupada disciples first, from the what they call Prabhupada, the Senapati General. He's the first devotee to actually spread Krishna consciousness outside of India. And we're the ones who've got that, service. We've got so much responsibility, but so much nectar. We should always think about whatever we do, how can it attract people to devotional service? And if we remain in that consciousness, we'll be enthused all the time. Okay, so I can stop there.
Thank you, Maharaj, for your time and enlightening us on Rupa Goswami. Appreciate. Thank you very much. Just a couple of quick announcements. I'm sure you are all aware that the lockdown is on from tonight in northern England. So people are banned to visit each other. So please, do take care of yourself, and just keep on top of the things. So that's one thing. And so tomorrow, Saturday, there is a monthly Mangalarti.
Monthly Mangalarti?
Monthly Mangalarti class. There won't be Mangalarti. So 8 o'clock, there will be a class. And we have been doing a Mahajan series. And tomorrow, the Mahajan will be Narad from the 12 Mahajan series. And on Sunday, we have a special guest who will be talking on the pastimes of Lord Balram. So the class will begin at 12 instead of at 1 o'clock. Just please make a note of it. And on Monday, 3rd August, it is Balram Jayanti, and there will be a special class in the evening at 7 p.m. So, and regarding our Janmashtami, it has to be a virtual Rath Yatra. So we have taken a good decision. We were initially thinking whether to have, some kind of, like temple opening and having the DT darshan at the temple, but we took the right decision to have it virtual. So we will send you all the details regarding Janmashtami and Prabhupada Appearance Day by Monday. Hopefully Monday they should be coming out the details. So please look for that. Thank you. So Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Maharaj.
Can I ask Maharaj a question?
Yeah.
Maharaj, we hear we got the information from the Shastras, and I've heard many lectures that some personality like Rupa Goswami was Rupa Manjari in the spiritual world. I just wonder, how do we obtain this information? How do we know where who give us this information that who they are in the spiritual world, where they're coming from?
There is a book. What do they call that book? I can't remember.
I'm not thinking about the book. I'm thinking about the personality who reveals this information. If disciples, if followers, or how do they they get this information from meditation or?
Well, that's what I'm saying. There's a book which tells about the devotees who are in Krishna Lila, their counterparts in Chaitanya Lila. And, you know, like that. So I don't know who compiled that book, but, you know, it's like these books are divine inspirations. They're not come in the natural way. Devotees who are, I mean, I can just give you my take on it, my limited knowledge, but, you know, devotee who was actually asked to write by other devotees, and he's given inspiration from Krishna. And, you know, we can understand anything by Krishna's mercy if we're pure. And so, can anybody remember the name of that book, which gives you...
Ganodesha
Gora Ganodesha Deepika.
Deepika. Yeah, by Kavi Karnapuri.
Yeah, that's right, Kavi Karnapuri there. So if you read that, you can understand those who's who. But, you know, we should be careful that we don't start, you know, thinking that it applies to all devotees. These are very special devotees, and it's approved by all the acharyas. At least, you know, it's not, it's all the different acharyas actually verify these things. Unless it's verified, like in that way, we shouldn't take it so seriously.
Okay, thank you, Maharaj.
All right. All
Hare
right.
Krishna.
See you soon.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Hope to see you in the morning. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare.
Thank you, Maharaj.